All right, let's talk about something you've probably never put together: horror movies and global power. It sounds kind of weird, right? But stick with me, because today we're diving into this fascinating story about the monsters we create, both on screen and, well, on our maps.
So let's kick things off with this really powerful idea. Think about horror movies. So often, we make our monsters out of people who are isolated, who are different, and who we just don't understand. And the message in these stories is pretty clear. If you're from some remote, forgotten place, you must be savage. You're the villain.
And that leads to the classic question in all the best horror films, doesn't it? It's the one that makes you look past the jump scares. So let's ask it a different way. Are the monsters always the ones with the chainsaws and the creepy masks? Or could they be something invisible?
You know, there's actually a whole subgenre of horror movies called Appalachian atrocity. And you know the type? City folks get lost, their car breaks down, and they stumble upon some isolated family clan that has its own, let's say, brutal set of rules. The real horror isn't just the violence. It's the feeling of trespassing, of breaking the laws of a forgotten, savage land.
Okay, so we have these monsters on the mat, but what if the real monster isn't a person at all? What if it's an invisible force, something you can feel messing everything up, but you just can't see it? And this is where we get to the core idea for today, the poltergeist.
The word literally means noisy ghost. It's not some creature you can fight with a weapon. It's a disruptive energy that just throws things around, breaks stuff, and tears a house apart from the inside. And here's what's so perfect about this. It's a fantastic metaphor for the unseen forces that really shape our world. Ambition, competition, and yeah, good old-fashioned greed.
Okay, so hold that thought about the noisy ghost, because now we're going to pivot from the creepy backwoods of horror films to the most remote, most extreme frontier on the entire planet. It's a place we think of as pure, silent, and empty. But is it? Or is it haunted by its own noisy ghost?
And that brings us to Antarctica. On paper, it's this pristine continent dedicated to peace and science, a shared space for all of humanity. But underneath all that ice, the geostrategic poltergeists, national interest, future resources, pure ambition, they're getting very, very noisy.
So for over 60 years, this thing called the Antarctic Treaty System has basically kept the peace. It was actually born during the Cold War, back in 1959, and then in 91, they added a ban on all mining. But here's the date you really need to remember, 2048. Because that's when that ban on grabbing resources could be back on the table. And trust me, the world is already getting ready for that moment.
So here's the catch. The treaty is built on a pretty shaky foundation of good faith, and you can really see the cracks in the ice. Territorial claims? They're not solved, they're just paused. Key phrases like peaceful purposes are super vague, and, this is the big one, there's no real way to enforce the rules. The whole thing, and I mean the whole thing, runs on trust, and that trust is starting to wear pretty thin.
To give you a sense of the stakes here, check out this number, 42%. Any guesses? Well, that is the percentage of the entire Antarctic continent claimed by just one country, Australia. The ambitions down there are absolutely enormous, even if they're frozen for now.
So who are the main characters in this global drama? Well, first up, you have China. They've been very open about their goal to become a polar great power. They aren't just building research stations for the fun of it. They're mapping the continent's resources. Every single move is about positioning themselves for the day those treaty protections might just disappear. And then you've got Russia. For Russia, Antarctica is a stage to prove they're still a global player. But they're also keenly aware of what's under the ice. They have a very clear, very long-term goal of tapping into the huge reserves of oil, gas, and minerals there. This is a patient, strategic play for future power. Now, the U.S. plays a totally different game. It's a bit more subtle. Officially, they don't make any claims, but unofficially, they work to maintain a basis to claim territory. It's a classic power move, right? By focusing on science but keeping their options open, they make sure they'll have a seat at the table and a potential slice of the pie no matter what happens.
So you know what happens next, right? When powerful players start testing the limits, well, it starts to look an awful lot like a horror movie. In those movies, you survive by following the rules. In Antarctica, nations have survived by following the treaty. But just like that character who always goes into the basement alone, some nations are starting to bend those rules. Just look at this comparison. It's pretty wild. On the left, you have the unwritten rules for surviving a horror movie. A big one is, don't trespass. We all know how that ends.
On the right, you have the written rules for Antarctica. But just like in the movies, the ambitious players are starting to push those boundaries to see what they can get away with. And how do they do it? It's a game of ambiguity. They use the treaty's own vague language against it. The treaty says scientific research is allowed? Okay, cool. We'll just conduct some geological surveys that, whoops, just happen to tell us where all the valuable stuff is buried. The treaty allows peaceful purposes? Great. We'll train astronauts from Mars who are often military, and just say it's for the good of all humanity. It's rule-bending, hidden in plain sight.
And this is where it all comes together. Those horror movies about savage lands are so effective because they tap into a primal fear. But what's happening in Antarctica, it reveals a new kind of savagery. It's quieter, more sophisticated, and it's driven by 21st century ambition.
That old spirit of cooperation that created the Antarctic Treaty, yeah, that's fading fast. It's being replaced by what is basically a 21st century gold rush, a race for rare minerals, a battle for strategic high ground, even a training field for the new space race. The old idealism is giving way to the cold, hard logic of national interest. The noisy ghosts are definitely getting louder.
So in the end, whether it's a forgotten backwoods in a horror film or the vast, empty ice at the bottom of the world, it turns out every frontier is really just a mirror. It doesn't create new monsters. It just reflects the ones we bring with us. And it leaves us with one pretty haunting question. When the rules finally break for good, what kind of monsters are we going to see staring back at us?